How's it, everyone? Welcome to another string review right here on OpenCourt. So today we're taking another look at a string by one of my favorite string manufacturing companies, Ytex. So today we're taking a look at the Ytex Hexagon X. Let's check it out. So the Ytex Hexagon X, as the name implies, is a hexagonal 6-sided copolyester monofilament developed by Ytex. Ytex is famous for their spin generation as well as their comfort and tension maintenance. It's pretty hard to achieve all of that in one string. The Quadro Twist is their flagship poly. It's one of my favorite, and they also claim that this Hexagon X is supposed to achieve something similar, just being a little bit softer. So this Hexagon X comes in two colors, the pearl red and a black, and depending which color you get, the gauge is also different. The black is 128 millimeter and the pearl red is 125 millimeter. One set of this Ytex string will cost about $15.75 for a set, and for a whole reel it comes in just under $190. By the way, if you guys are ever interested in trying out any of Ytex's strings, I have a discount code down in my description below. If you visit the Ytex website and use that code, you'll get 15% off your order. It's also, according to the Ytex website, the reference string for this is Babla RPM Blast. I'm a little curious about that because RPM Blast, I've said in the past, I do not really like that string because it plays so muted and dead and the tension doesn't really retain that well. So if this is going to play like RPM Blast, I'm a little worried, but Ytex has earned the benefit of the doubt because I love all of their strings. Alright, so as you guys can see, I got the pearl red color of the Ytex Hexagon X in my Ytex V-Core SV98. And I have it strung at my usual reference tension at 52 in the mains and 50 in the crosses. So there's not really much else to talk about with this string, so let's jump on the court, let's play with it, and let's see if this lives up to the Ytex name. So before we get into the full pros and cons, I want to touch on something I noticed with this string that I've never experienced before, and that is that the Ytex Hexagon X had an extremely long break-in period. This took a lot of adjusting on my part, and I'll touch more on why in the cons section because that was definitely something that bothered me. But I like to start with the pros, so once the tension dropped a bit and the string started to become a bit worn, I actually think it started to play better. It became a lot more predictable, and the control it gave me on full swings rivaled some of the best control polys I've ever tried. I liken the response to Solinco Confidential. It's a little bit on the muted side, but it feels firm and solid. I could take full cuts from the baseline and the spin would bring the ball down inside the court. In this aspect, the Hexagon X was similar to RPM Blast. They both have a control-oriented construction, so it complements baseliners who like to swing with reckless abandon. I really like the control on my return game because I like to take a big rip and I could trust the ball would come down inside the court. I found myself staying back on the baseline more often than usual with this setup because I felt much more comfortable attacking from the backcourt. I was impressed with the versatility on my forehand stroke. I could trade deep ground strokes with the opposing baseliner, but also hit low sinking topspin to get the ball to drop sharply at the net player's feet. The control and spin also gave me the ability to hit angles to pull my opponent wide. High and loopy topspin also pushed my opponents back and made coming up to the net easier. Overall, I liked the Hexagon X most on my forehand swing because of the versatility it allowed me to play with. That versatility was mostly due to the great spin generation of the Hexagon X. Like all other shaped Ytex strings I've tried, this string offers great spin potential on fast swings. The Hexagon X also retains its spin potential well into the playtest, and even after the aforementioned tension drop, the string continued snapping back, which is why it played so predictably after that break-in. There seems to be very little string movement, so the strings don't get stuck out of place like other shaped polys that notch and lose their outer coating. In my opinion, the spin potential doesn't quite hit the heights of the Quadro Twist or even the Square X, but I was still able to hit plenty of spin thanks to the combination of the Hexagon X in the V-Core SV98. I was able to hit wide kick serves on the ad side and pull the returner off the court. This is usually only possible with a string that causes the serve to dive sharply onto the singles line, and the Hexagon X was able to achieve that. Slice serves weren't as effective at putting my opponents on the defensive because I couldn't quite get the ball to slide out wide. This could be because I don't approach the slice serve with as sharp an angle as I do with the kick serve motion, so the contact isn't displacing the strings as much. The response is stiffer than I expected because the advertising for the Hexagon X stated that it was supposed to be soft like other Ytex strings. To be frank, I never thought Quadro Twist was that soft. The only Ytex strings I've tried that I would consider soft are the Square X and Octo Twist. The Hexagon X definitely felt firmer than those two. For me, this wasn't a bad thing at all because I like stiffer layups, and although the response is on the muted side, I was still able to hit decent touch shots because of the firmness. Drop shots and angle volleys were a bit difficult to figure out, but where I felt the response contributed most was on approach volleys, half volleys, and short angle ground strokes. The firm feel gave me the response to be able to control the height of approach volleys and half volleys, so I didn't pop them up and my short angle stayed inside the sidelines. The Hexagon X allowed me to use my front court game at about 80% capacity, which for me will win me most points at net, but it also added a much needed control dimension from my backcourt game, and that in itself made this string a solid choice. Now moving on to the cons of the Hexagon X. I said earlier I would talk more about that break-in period, and here it is. This string felt incredibly boardy at the beginning, so much so that I was almost ready to write it off and call it my least favorite Ytex string I've ever tried. It eventually settles in, but it requires a tremendous amount of patience that I don't really feel is worth it. On the first day, I noticed the strings barely moving, which created a lack of spin and boardy feel. The trajectory was also very high, and I didn't feel any snapback for spin and control, so I was spraying the ball all over the court. I could not hit any touch shots to save my life either. Drop shots would die before they reached the net, and angle volleys would also clip the net cord. I didn't feel confident swinging away on aggressive returns either because the strings weren't snapping back and I wasn't getting the ball to dip inside the baseline. I felt like hitting all out flat at times just to see if the boardy string bed would kill the ball's kinetic energy, but I'm not really a flat hitter, so I decided it wouldn't be wise. For the first couple play sessions, I resorted mostly to slicing and swinging vertically to get spin while hoping the strings would settle in. It wasn't until about the fourth play session that I finally noticed the strings playing more predictably. The Ytex Quadro Twist has a similar break-in, but it doesn't take anywhere near this long. Maybe if I strung it at a lower tension, or if I just hit harder to loosen up the strings, it would settle in faster, but I was honestly surprised it took that long to become playable enough for my playstyle. Secondly, even after the strings settled in, I felt the overall power level of the Hexagon X was fairly low. It definitely packs more punch than RPM Blast, but I think the Quadro Twist and the softer Octo Twist or the Pro Tour assists more in the power department. I struggled to clear the net consistently with my flat serve. Because I'm short, my contact point on the flat serve needs to be precise for me to clear the net, but also keep it inside the service line. I like slightly more powerful strings for this reason. My two-handed backhand was surprisingly okay. When returning the momentum of my opponent's shot, the string bed flexes more, so it was easier for me to generate pace, but when I had to do it all on my own, like on serve or slow approach shots, I couldn't really hit for power. And lastly, I said earlier that the stiffer feel is something I liked, but I'm also going to mention it in the cons because I think people who try this string thinking it's going to be on the comfortable side may be turned off by the stiffness, especially at the beginning with its boardy feel. Ytex has some very comfortable but playable polys in their inventory, so if you're looking for something more comfortable, try the Square X or Octo Twist. Lastly, let's discuss who I think the Ytex Hexagon X string is for. And I have to be honest here, I really don't know, because that long break-in period is something that a lot of players are probably not going to like. Anyone who can be patient enough through that break-in may as well just use the Quadro Twist. I think big hitters from the baseline who want a more muted feel with added control could benefit from this string. I guess in that sense, this Hexagon X does play like the RPM Blast. Maybe that's what Ytex meant on their website. But in conclusion, the Hexagon X is still probably my least favorite string among the Ytex strings I've tried so far. It's not a bad string, it just takes too long for me to like it, but once it breaks in and the tension stabilizes, it plays great. I still may use it from time to time because it doesn't feel like it's going to drop off again anytime soon. But for most advanced players, I would still recommend the Quadro Twist as the best Ytex string. Thank you for watching this review of the Ytex Hexagon X right here on OpenCourt. If you guys like this content, be sure to overhead smash that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you on an open court.